The streets of the city were quiet that evening, with a soft breeze rustling the leaves and the faint hum of distant traffic. Henry, a 20-year-old with tired eyes but a heart full of determination, sat on the front steps of his modest apartment. His worn sneakers tapped nervously against the concrete as he watched the sun sink below the skyline. Every flicker of light from the street lamps reminded him of his dreams that felt far away, almost impossible. "One day," he whispered to himself, "I'll give my family a life they deserve. They'll never have to worry about paying bills or skipping meals again." His voice trembled because deep down he knew how heavy reality was. Henry's family struggled every day. His father, William, worked long hours at a small auto repair shop, grease and scars covering his hands, his back bent from years of labor. His mother, Grace, cleaned offices late into the night, her hands raw from scrubbing floors, but she never let her exhaustion show in front of her children. Henry's younger sister, Emily, only 10, looked up to him as her hero, and every time she asked for something as simple as new shoes or a treat, Henry's chest ached. Their small apartment was plain and worn, with creaky floorboards and a tiny kitchen that barely held all their pots and pans. Yet, despite the struggles, Henry carried a fire inside him, a dream that refused to die. One chilly evening, as Henry stared at the darkening sky, he thought about the lives around him. People in his neighborhood often walked long distances just to buy fresh bread, pastries, or cakes. "Why can't I bring something better right here?" he thought. His mind raced with ideas, but reality pressed down on him. No money, no shop, no supplies, everything seemed against him. But he remembered his father's words, "Dreams are not free. You have to fight for what you want. Start small, use what you have, and grow from there." Those words sparked something deep inside him, a flicker of hope that grew into a flame. That night Henry couldn't sleep. He imagined his own bakery, the smell of fresh bread filling the streets, people smiling as they took their first bite, and his family finally free from constant worry. The very next morning Henry rose before dawn. He made his way to a nearby bakery, worn and nervous, carrying nothing but his courage. The owner, Mr. Anderson, was known to be strict and wary of strangers. The moment Henry spoke, asking to sell the bakery's bread in his neighborhood without upfront payment, his heart pounded. "Why should I trust a boy with no experience?" Mr. Anderson asked, eyes sharp. Henry swallowed but looked him straight in the eyes. "I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for a chance. I'll work hard, and if I fail, you'll never see me again." After a long pause, Mr. Anderson finally agreed. "1 week. Don't fail." Early the next morning, Henry set up a small wooden stand near the park. His hands shook as he arranged the golden loaves, each one a symbol of his hard work. "Fresh bread. Warm and delicious," he called, but for a moment no one stopped. Doubt gnawed at him. What if no one bought anything? What if he failed on his very first day? But Henry refused to give up. He offered free samples with a genuine smile, making eye contact with every passerby. Slowly people began tasting and buying. By the end of the day, every loaf was gone. Henry's hands trembled as he counted the money, his first profit. Tears blurred his vision, not from sadness but from relief and pride. That evening he walked back to Mr. Anderson, returning the money. "I kept my word," he said, chest swelling with emotion. The old man nodded slightly. "Come back tomorrow?" Day after day Henry repeated the routine, waking at 4 a.m., walking miles, carrying bread, and selling it with passion. The neighborhood began to notice the boy who never stopped smiling despite exhaustion. After 2 months he saved enough to buy a small cart, making it easier to carry more bread. Mothers trusted him with their family's breakfasts, children ran to him for cookies, and neighbors admired his relentless dedication. But inside, Henry's dream burned brighter. Selling bread was only the beginning. He wanted to bake his own bread, create something uniquely his, something that carried his story, his heart, his soul. One evening, while counting his earnings, a customer suggested, "Henry, you sell well, but if you bake your own bread, your profits will grow." The thought both thrilled and terrified him. He had never baked before. What if he failed? What if all his hard work collapsed? That night, sitting alone in the quiet apartment, he remembered his father's words. "Dreams are not free. The cost of dreams was risk, failure, and relentless effort." Determined, he approached Mr. Anderson the next morning. "Sir, can you teach me to bake?" he asked. Mr. Anderson frowned, suspicious. "Why would I? If you bake, you won't need me anymore." Henry's voice was firm. "You gave me my first chance. If I succeed, I won't forget you. I'll help your bakery too." There was a pause. The stern face softened slightly. "Baking is not easy. Takes patience, time, and heart. If you're ready, come at 3 a.m. tomorrow. Henry's heart raced. A new chapter was about to begin. One that would test his resolve, push him to the edge and teach him the meaning of resilience. The mornings were still dark and quiet when Henry arrived at Mr. Anderson's bakery. The streets were empty, and the air carried a crisp chill, but Henry's heart burned with anticipation. Today wasn't just another day of selling bread, it was the beginning of learning how to create something entirely his own. Mr. Anderson guided him through the process, measuring flour precisely, kneading the dough with care, and learning the delicate timing of the oven. At first, Henry's hands ached, and his bread often came out too hard or too soft. Each failure made him feel frustrated, almost defeated. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this," he muttered to himself one evening, sitting alone in the tiny kitchen after ruining another batch. But deep down he knew giving up was not an option. He remembered his father's words, "Dreams are not free." Every mistake was a lesson, every burn and crack in the dough was shaping his skill and character. Henry woke earlier each day, determined to improve. He practiced kneading, measuring, and baking until the motions became almost second nature. He experimented with different techniques, watched tutorials in the library and took careful notes. Slowly the loaves became golden, soft, and fragrant. The first time he held a perfectly baked loaf in his hands, a smile of pure triumph spread across his face. He had achieved something he once thought impossible. He was beginning to create, not just sell. Back in his neighborhood, Henry's sales started to grow. People came not only for bread but for the warmth and energy he radiated. Mothers trusted him to bring breakfast for their families, and children eagerly ran to the cart for cookies and pastries he occasionally gave as small gifts. Henry's little sister, Emily, often helped him pack the baked goods, her eyes shining with pride. His mother, Grace, brewed tea and encouraged him late into the night. Every small smile, every thankful nod from a customer, reminded Henry why he kept going. But success didn't mean the challenges disappeared. One morning, a new bakery opened nearby, run by a young entrepreneur named Eric. The shop was bright, decorated with colorful signs and elegant displays. Curious customers flocked to Eric's bakery, and Henry immediately noticed the dip in his sales. Fear and doubt crept in. What if all my hard work was for nothing, he thought. His chest tightened with worry, but he refused to let panic control him. Instead, he approached his customers and asked for honest feedback. "What do you like about Eric's bakery? How can I improve?" Some mentioned Eric's neat displays, others praised the intricacy of his cakes. Henry realized he needed to adapt, not just as a baker but as a businessman. Using his savings, Henry painted his cart bright and inviting, added decorations and offered free samples of his pastries. He even began experimenting with cake designs, learning from videos and practice, turning every mistake into a step forward. Slowly the customers returned, drawn not just to the bread and pastries but to the energy and determination Henry embodied. One elderly woman said to him, "I've seen many young people give up when things get hard, but you didn't. That's why we trust you." Her words filled him with pride and renewed his spirit. Months passed and Henry's bakery continued to grow. He saved enough to rent a small shop, modest but welcoming, and named it Henry's Fresh Bakes. Every morning he woke before sunrise, baked fresh bread, pastries and cakes, and opened his doors with a smile. His family was proud. Emily chatted happily with customers and Grace managed the accounts, but Henry knew this was just the beginning. He wanted to reach more people, make his family proud, and prove that determination could turn dreams into reality. Yet life wasn't finished testing him. One stormy night, as Henry was closing the shop, smoke curled from the corner of the bakery. Panicking, he rushed in and saw a small fire near the oven. He grabbed water and stopped the flames, but much of his equipment was damaged. The next morning, neighbors whispered, maybe this is the end for him. But Henry refused to accept defeat. Standing outside his damaged bakery, he drew a deep breath and said, "This is just another challenge." He assessed his savings, realizing it wasn't enough to replace everything. Fear tried to creep in, but he remembered his journey. From nothing, guided by hard work and grit, he had built his first success. Determined, Henry sought guidance from Mr. Anderson, who had retired but still offered wisdom. "Leo, you already know the answer," the old man said. "Nothing is free. Work harder, believe in yourself, and others will believe in you too." Inspired, Henry began baking at home with the equipment he still had. He told his customers, "I won't let you down. Even if it's a small amount, I'll keep serving." Many townspeople admired his courage and came forward to help, some donating ingredients, others money, and some offering their time to repair the shop. Months later, Henry reopened the bakery. It was better than ever, painted in bright colors with new decorations and a variety of fresh pastries. On the day of the grand reopening, the town's mayor visited and said, "Henry, you are a true inspiration. You've shown us that with determination, anything is possible." Henry stood before the crowd, proud and emotional, and said, "Thank you. Nothing in life is free, not success, not respect, not love. Everything must be earned with hard work, patience, and persistence. Never let failure stop you. Every challenge is a step toward something greater." Henry's bakery was no longer just a place to buy bread. It had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and determination. People from other towns came to meet the young man who refused to give up. Through every struggle, failure, and obstacle, Henry showed that dreams require effort, mistakes teach lessons, and courage can inspire an entire community. The weeks after the reopening of Henry's Fresh Bakes were some of the most challenging yet rewarding times of Henry's life. The bakery, now a symbol of hope and resilience, had grown beyond a simple local shop. People from neighboring towns traveled to taste Henry's creations, eager to meet the young man who refused to give up even in the face of adversity. But with this success came new responsibilities, challenges, and the constant pressure to maintain the standard he had set for himself. Henry felt the weight of it all on his shoulders, yet he carried it with determination. Every morning, long before the sun rose, Henry was already in the bakery. The aroma of fresh bread, pastries, and cakes filled the air, signaling the beginning of another demanding day. He meticulously checked each loaf, perfected each pastry, and experimented with new recipes, determined to offer something unique for every customer. Emily, now older and more responsible, helped with the packaging, arranging cookies and pastries with care. Grace managed the finances and inventory, while Henry focused on the craft and vision. Every action, every decision, was guided by the principle his father had instilled in him. Dreams are not free, everything must be earned. Despite the success, competition never rested. A large bakery chain had opened a few miles away, offering glossy marketing and mass-produced products. Many townspeople were tempted to visit the new shop, leaving Henry worried. He realized that his bakery wasn't just competing for sales, it was competing for loyalty, trust, and emotional connection. Henry knew he couldn't compete with advertising budgets, but he could offer something money couldn't buy: authenticity, heart, and personal attention. To strengthen his bond with the community, Henry started hosting small baking workshops every weekend. Children and adults alike gathered, learning to knead dough, mix ingredients, and decorate cakes. Henry shared not just baking techniques but also the story of his journey, the struggles, failures, and lessons he had learned along the way. He spoke about courage, persistence, and the importance of believing in oneself. These workshops became more than just classes. They became a source of inspiration, drawing people closer to the bakery and to Henry himself. One day, a renowned food critic from a national magazine visited the bakery. Henry's heart raced as he watched the critic sample his bread and pastries. The silence felt endless. Finally, the critic smiled, jotting down notes and complimenting the flavors, freshness, and creativity. That review, published a week later, brought national attention to Henry's Fresh Bakes. Orders poured in from online customers, local businesses, and even restaurants looking for high-quality baked goods. Henry's dream of reaching a larger audience was slowly becoming a reality. But with growth came challenges he had never faced. Managing larger orders, maintaining quality, and dealing with delivery logistics tested his patience and skill. There were nights when Henry felt overwhelmed, staring at stacks of unsold pastries or dealing with a broken oven. Yet, every time doubt crept in, he remembered the fire that once nearly destroyed everything he had built. He remembered the townspeople who had supported him, Mr. Anderson's wise words, and his father's lessons about the cost of dreams. "This is nothing compared to what I've overcome," he reminded himself, taking a deep breath and pushing forward. Henry's personal growth mirrored the growth of his business. He learned to delegate, trust his family and staff, and make strategic decisions. He became more patient, more disciplined, and more resilient. Each challenge became an opportunity to refine not just his baking but also his character. When employees made mistakes, he guided them patiently, teaching them the value of perseverance and care. When suppliers failed to deliver on time, he innovated, finding alternative solutions without panicking. Every experience, good or bad, added layers to his understanding of responsibility, leadership, and humility. Meanwhile, Emily had grown into a confident young girl, inspired by her brother's example. She started helping Henry with customer service, learning how to interact, communicate, and manage expectations. Grace continued to handle the financial side, ensuring the business remained profitable while still maintaining its personal touch. Henry felt immense pride seeing his family grow alongside him, each member contributing to the dream they had all fought for together. Months turned into a year, and Henry's bakery became a cornerstone of the town. People no longer visited just for bread, they came for the experience, the story, and the dedication behind every loaf. Local schools invited Henry to speak at events, inspiring students to chase their dreams with relentless determination. He began collaborating with other small business owners, mentoring young entrepreneurs who, like him, had big dreams but limited resources. Henry had become more than a baker. He had become a symbol of possibility, hard work, and hope. One quiet evening after closing the bakery, Henry stood outside, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. He thought back to the nights when he had no money, no equipment, and barely any hope. The journey had been long, filled with sleepless nights, failures, and countless obstacles. And yet, every step had been worth it. He realized that success wasn't a single moment, it was the accumulation of perseverance, learning, and courage. Dreams are not free, but the journey makes them priceless, he thought. Henry also understood the importance of giving back. He established a small fund to help local families struggling financially, ensuring that other young people could pursue their passions without being burdened by poverty. He donated baking equipment to schools, provided scholarships for culinary students, and partnered with community centers to offer free workshops. He knew that success was not just about personal achievement, it was about lifting others along the way. Then came the ultimate test. A severe winter storm hit the town, causing power outages and threatening supply chains. Henry had to think quickly to maintain his bakery and ensure his customers weren't left disappointed. He coordinated with suppliers, rented temporary generators, and organized staff schedules to keep production going. The bakery stayed open, and the townspeople marveled at Henry's leadership, resilience, and commitment. Even in the harshest conditions, he refused to let failure dictate his path. Through it all, Henry's philosophy remained simple: hard work, belief in oneself, and learning from every mistake. He understood that no one could hand him success. It had to be earned brick by brick, loaf by loaf. And in earning it, he discovered that the journey itself held more value than the destination. Years later, when asked about his journey, Henry smiled and said, "Nothing in life is free, not success, not respect, not love. Everything must be earned. There will be failures, fires, storms, and obstacles. But if you persist, believe in yourself, and refuse to give up, the world will bend in your favor. Every challenge is just a step toward something greater." Henry's story spread far and wide. People in other towns and cities, even across the country, visited his bakery not just for the food but for the inspiration it represented. He had transformed a small dream into a life-changing reality, not only for himself and his family but for the entire community. His bakery became a hub of hope, a testament to the power of resilience, and a reminder that true success comes to those who fight for it, even when the odds seem impossible. And so, Henry continued to wake before the sun, knead dough, and bake bread with the same passion he had on that very first day. But now, his journey was more than just about survival or earning a living, it was about purpose, inspiration, and leaving a legacy. Through sweat, tears, and unwavering determination, Henry had proven to the world that dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed, could indeed come true if one never gave up.